Welcome to Odds Bodkins Curiosity Shoppe, where you'll find the unique, the bizarre, and sometimes the haunted. Feel free to look around, peruse the items, and never fear, there's nothing here that bites. Hard anyway. Well, hello there. Welcome back to Odds Bodkins Curiosity Shoppe. I am your shopkeeper, Chris Baker, and an interesting section of the store. We don't often go to this section, but I thought it very apropos given the subject matter for today's episode. If you'll follow me this way, this small section is one we have dedicated to an all-too-real horror that has plagued the world for decades now. This is a section of the shop that we dedicate to the horrors of the nuclear age. And in particular, over here, you'll see a number of framed schematics. These are designs on various types of bomb shelters that became very popular through the 50s and 60s, and even in through the 80s. We've had various horror stories, whether it be the written word or on the silver screen, and everything and anything in between, depicting life as it would be like living in a fallout shelter and the horrors that are contained there within or without. And it is those ideas that give way to today's episode of Odds Bodkins Curiosity Shoppe. So let's pull out the mutoscope and take a look at the new Amazon Prime series, Fallout. So the Amazon Prime series Fallout is one that I've been looking forward to, not for a long time. I knew this was coming out for some time. I knew it was based on a video game series that started back in 1997. I believe the first video game came out. Fallout 2, 3, 4. They've got Fallout 5 in the works. But there's also a lot of spin-off video game series from Fallout. Fallout Tactics, Fallout Brotherhood of Steel, Fallout New Vegas, Fallout Shelter, Fallout Pinball, Fallout 76, the Fallout Shelter Online stuff. So there's a ton of content that I've never played these games. I'm aware of them, though. You know, there's so much of the iconography of this video game series that made itself into pop culture and the zeitgeist of genre and video games. So there's so much of the imagery from Fallout that I'm aware of without really having played the games at all. But it wasn't until I started seeing the trailers for this that I thought, oh, this could be really good. I mean, the trailers looked interesting. It looked very bright and vibrant, and it had humor, and it had a lot of sci-fi genre tropes and things that really looked interesting. I thought this has the opportunity to be really good, or it could turn out very bad because, video game series have and movies have kind of gotten a bad rap over the years, over the decades, but it's not until recently that we've really had some excellent video game adaptations. Of course, The Last of Us with HBO, probably one of the most shining examples. I know some people don't really care for it, but I've really enjoyed the Halo series on Paramount Plus. So we're getting a lot more really good video game adaptations these days, and this looked like it could have been one of them. It also had the opportunity to be a real bust, and I was hoping against that because, like I said, I've never played the Fallout games. I'm aware of them, and I understand the games and what's in them well enough to be able to say, oh, that's from the game. Oh, that's from the game. Oh, that's from the game. But I didn't know if the game was going to resonate with fans of the game. I thought there was a good possibility that the layperson like me would probably enjoy it just on its own. But were the fans of the video game series going to latch on to this as well? And I think you got a good combination of both. I think fans of the video game like this. I think people who've never played, or somebody like me that's never played the game but knows enough about it to be dangerous. I think everyone is really enjoying this. So without further ado, we're going to get into some spoiler territory. If you haven't watched Fallout on Amazon Prime, go check it out, then come back and hear my thoughts on it. But if you have watched it or you don't really care about spoilers or anything like that, we're going to press on and talk about this series in some spoiler territory. So one of the things about this series that I really love is the basic premise of it. When you talk about science fiction and you're talking about apocalyptic science fiction, it doesn't get better than a post-apocalyptic world. And that's what you have here. You have our main character, Lucy, who is in these glorified fallout shelters by Vault Tech. And we'll kind of get into the nuts and bolts of that a little bit. But she has to go find her father, so she has to go out into the wasteland that is a world that has been destroyed by a nuclear apocalypse. And I love stories like that because the romanticizing of a nuclear apocalypse where you have this world where civilization is still, it's still holding on by a thread, but then you get all these creepy mutant monsters and mutant people, and it's fairly unrealistic as to what would happen if a nuclear war happened, and the devastation and the death and decay of society that would come out of it. But when you're talking about genre and you're talking about fun science fiction, this has all the benchmarks of what make a fun post-nuclear apocalyptic series. And that's one of the things I really enjoyed. Another thing I did enjoy was this cast. I thought it was a really solid cast as far as your main characters, and it had a lot of really good cameos throughout this. Ella Purnell as Lucy, I really enjoy her. She's the vault dweller. She is raised, this is 200 years after the events of this nuclear war that took place, and she is raised in a society that is solely lived in these vaults and have never been out into the surface world. And I loved the idea of this character. She's very sweet and innocent and very naive, very emblematic of that idealized view of America through the 50s. It's post-World War II. We're number one. We became a world power. It's all about truth, justice, and the American way. That apple pie and golly shucks and a can-do attitude. We're the light and bright shining beacon for the world, that very naive look of America, or look at America, where we're looking in the mirror, but we're not seeing the blemishes. We're only seeing the good stuff. And she kind of epitomizes that. And I thought she really does a good job with the naivety and the sweetness and the innocence. But then she also has this toughness about her that is kind of emblematic of the stereotypical American spirit. And I just like how Ella Purnell plays this character. I think she, for a character that has to run the gamut of emotion from being this naive, childlike character to going out into the world and the confusion of what she's facing and the fact that everybody seems to be trying to kill her. It's even a line that she speaks at one point, to the toughness of, having to either knuckle up and face the world head on or run back to your vault. She chooses to stand strong and go face the world to get the ends that she's trying to get to. And I think Ella Purnell, excellent job at portraying that myriad of emotion and that range of character development that was quite fun. Another character that I just absolutely love, because I love this actor, Walton Goggins, playing the Ghoul, is just fantastic. And while Lucy kind of plays that naive apple pie idealism of America, Walton Goggins plays that cynical, jaded, war-weary America. And I like how you get two versions of his story. You get him as the Ghoul in present time, where he is kind of that cynical, war-hardened character, but then you get him as the Cooper Howard character in some of the flashbacks, where you get to see him as a Hollywood actor turned Vault Tech ambassador, and he is very much an idealist in how America is and how America should be, and Americans do this and we don't do that, and we don't start war, we do what's right. And then to see where he becomes the Ghoul, and like I said, is a very more cynical character about what's right and what a person will do when they're put in a position where they have nothing but necessity driving them. It's a very interesting. Walton Goggins, I mean, Jesus, is there anything that he is in that he doesn't do a fantastic job. I really love him as an actor, and I think he is just perfect for this role as the Ghoul. Now, the other main character that we get, Maximus, played by Aaron Monton, is, he's a squire in the Brotherhood of Steel, wants to be a knight, becomes a knight by questionable means. But I like his character. I think other than the Ghoul seems, on its surface to be a not very complicated character. I think it's more complicated than, I think all these characters, whether it's Lucy or the Ghoul, I think they're more complicated than they are on the surface. But the Maximus character is a character that is complicated throughout this whole thing. And that's what I love watching this character kind of develop, because in some regards he's a coward, but in other regards he wants to do the right thing. So sometimes, he may be cowardly in one moment, but he'll turn around and do the right thing in others. And it's just really interesting to see this character who is in some regards a bit childlike and naive as well. And I think that's why the Maximus and the Lucy character really kind of click on a certain level. It is interesting to see him make his way in this world, and the juxtaposition between a character like Lucy, who has been living her whole life in the perfection of the vaults, and Maximus, who has lived his whole life in the desolation of the wasteland, and the common ground that these two find in their personal characters, and how they mesh and have. I enjoyed the chemistry of these two actors. They didn't get a ton of time to develop their relationship, I don't think, just because there's so much going on, but I really enjoyed their characters. I also really enjoyed some of the cameos, and three of the cameos that my wife and I absolutely loved is, one, Matt Berry showing up as the Mr. Handy robot. He also plays the Snip Snip robot. He plays the character Sebastian Leslie, a friend of Cooper Howard in some of the flashbacks. Matt Berry, both my wife and I are huge fans of What We Do in the Shadows, and just absolutely loved him in anything he does, but really loved him showing up as the voice of these robots in this, and of course as a character in the flashbacks. Really enjoyed that. Dallas Goldtooth, who another show my wife and I really loved was the Reservation Dogs series, and he plays the spirit in that every time he came on the screen and did the "Aho, young warrior," he's just such a funny actor and a good actor, and it was fun to see him show up again as another actor friend of the Cooper Howard character. And speaking of Reservation Dogs, Maddie Carteropple has a brief cameo in that scene where with the Matt Berry as Snip Snip, and the Ghoul and Lucy show up there. He played Ansel in Reservation Dogs, and it was really fun to see him show up as a little brief cameo in this. But there are a ton more. Chris Parnell, Fred Armisen, Michael Rappaport, Eric Estrada, a ton of cameos in this series, which were all really fun because, like I said, even beyond the main cast, there was a lot of really good actors and cameos in this series. I also really like the CG, all the special effects, the CG effects, the practical effects. I thought some of the big creatures, like that big salamander thing with all the fingers in its mouth, that was creepy, and I thought the CG was pretty good. Some of the work they did on Chris Parnell's face with the Cyclops look, I thought, hell, that's a better CGI in the middle of somebody's face than the Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness CGI in the middle of his forehead. I also love the practical knight armor that they used for the Brotherhood of Steel knights. That could have easily been a completely CG character, and I'm so glad that they used like practical suits for these knights. They looked really good. They were very accurate to the game. And if you watch this and you've played the games, my God, you can count so many different references from like stuff like the equipment and the tech, the Mr. Handy robots, the Pit Boys, a lot of the weapons, the Vault Boy bobbleheads, Nuka-Cola, stuff like that, all pulled directly from the game. A lot of the locations, like the vaults, some of the cutscenes from the video game, the vaults look exactly like that. Those cryopods that Norm finds at the end of the series are pulled directly from the game. A lot of the characters and things you meet along the way, like the dog meat, that was such a fun little, kind of like I said, a juxtaposition with the ghoul and dog meat and Cooper Howard and his dog. In the flashbacks, it was kind of a fun. I'm interested to see where that relationship goes. A boy and his dog. The feral ghouls was a fun thing pulled directly from the game. The two-headed cow, the mutant bear, the big giant cockroaches. They didn't have the death claw in this, but they had a skull of one there. So a ton of wonderful references. And at the very end, that last shot was a shot of the New Vegas Strip, which is from one of the games. And that's kind of where we're going to be going into season 2 of Fallout. But also the music a lot of that music is pulled directly from the games. They have radio stations in the games that play music, a lot of stuff, old standards from the 40s and the 50s, and they used a lot of that music that they use in the game directly in this, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. As somebody who's never played the game but is aware enough of the game that they do use some of these old standards, I really enjoyed that they paid attention to detail in putting this world together to make it so it's not necessarily a direct story ripoff of the games. It's taking the games and creating a world with that. And you get a lot of different things from all the various Fallouts. It's not like, okay, Season 1 is based on Fallout 1, and Season 2 is going to be based on Fallout 2. They pull a lot of different things from all the different games and built a story around this world that the games create. And that makes it really accessible for people who haven't played the games. It's going to give you a sense of the game, and I bet there's a lot of people that go back and play these games now that they've watched this, that have never played the game before. And I think that's interesting and that's cool. And I think a successful adaptation of a video game will do that. It'll have all the prerequisite nods to the game and nods to the story that the game is based on, but be its own thing enough to where if you haven't played the game, it's okay. You don't need to have played the game, but once you finally do, you're going to see, oh, I see where that came from, and I see where this fits into everything. And I think that is one of the strengths of this series as a video game adaptation. And I also enjoyed it had a sense of humor about it. This was definitely a series that knew what it was. It knew it was a science fiction video game adaptation that, even in the video games, from what I understand, there's a bit of black comedy and there's a bit of satire. It is definitely a commentary on capitalism and capitalism's place in war. Now, I'm definitely not an anti-capitalist type of person, but I think any extreme, whether it be socialism or capitalism, whether you go to one extreme or the other, it's not good for things. And, you got to find some common ground. You got to find a middle ground and all that. But I do appreciate some of the black comedy and the satire that relates to capitalism and war. And a lot of it was pretty funny. A lot of it was, on the nose. And then there's just some plain humor in this. And a lot of blood and gore. Jesus, please us. That first big gun battle in Philly with the ghoul taking on Maximus, who's kind of pretending to be Knight Titus. That had some gore and some blood and guts, and it was gnarly to watch. And you got notes of that throughout this series. Where that big bear, that mutant bear, attacks Knight Titus. That was pretty good too, and a fun fight scene. But you had a lot of those little holy shit moments of somebody getting a thing cut off or getting shot and or blown up or what have you. And they had a lot of really good gore. And I think that is, again, where this show really shined in. One, it had a great story that it told quite well. Even though it had multiple writers, you had Geneva Robertson Dworet and Graham Wagner, who wrote the first 3 episodes. Of course, they're the creator of this series. But then you had like a few other writers involved in the remaining episodes, but it felt very cohesive. You had a very solid story that they executed quite well. And from a directing standpoint, one of the creators, Jonathan Nolan, of course, you remember him and Lisa Joy from Westworld. They were creators on that. They're executive producers on this, and Jonathan Nolan directed the first 3 episodes, but then every other episode has different directors. And, I thought they did a really good job. The showrunners really kept a tight rein on this. They made sure that this story was on point and staying on target and didn't meander, where you get, in some other shows, you get a lot of meandering that really drags out a story and gets into nonsensical territory, and you just didn't have that with this. And I loved how this story is told in a way that created a mystery. You have what is going on with Lucy, Maximus, and the ghoul on the surface world. You have what's going on with Norman, the mystery that he has down in the vaults, and how it all kind of ties together with the flashbacks, where you see how this war happened and all these big companies manufacturing this war to increase profits, how all of these vaults are nothing but big petri dish experiments, and how Lucy's father is not the father she thought he was, and his place in all of this and in all of the destruction that was wrought on the world because of greed. And just a lot of really complicated things, complicated themes, and subject matter that is told in a very interesting way. Like I said, there was a nice amount of mystery to it all, and the revelations were really quite good. And you do that and you surround all of that with a really fun sci-fi adventure story. And that's what made Fallout just the fantastic series that it was. It wasn't without fault. It wasn't perfect. Very few things are perfect, but for the most part, I can't say that I had any complaints about this series as a whole. And I'm really looking forward to a second season. I don't know how long we're going to have to wait. I don't know if I think they may have already greenlit a second season for Fallout, if memory is serving me right. I certainly know it's doing really well on a lot of the places like Rotten Tomatoes, whether it be critic ratings or audience member ratings. So yeah, definitely cannot wait for a second season of this that we are sure to get. And I can't wait to see where they take this story, because there's just so much there. There's just so much story to tell. And I think they did a really good job of creating a story that can draw you in and draw you into this world that the video games created, but don't depend so much on the story of the video games to tell this story. And like I said, makes it so accessible for those of us who've never played the games, but it is going to be enjoyable enough if you have played the games, because there's so much that they draw on from those games that I can see why so many people love this, because I certainly never played the video games, know enough about them to be dangerous, but that didn't matter because I loved these episodes that we got of Fallout on their own, and really excited to see where this story goes, as we've got Maximus going back to the Brotherhood. We've got Lucy and the ghoul off chasing her father, and we finally find the ghoul's motivation, where he's not just some gun for hire. He's out there trying to find his family, and there's just a lot of really interesting story to tell, and I can't wait to see it once we get a season 2 of Fallout. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on Fallout, the Amazon Prime series that just wrapped up here. Well, they released all the episodes at once, which I thought that was a little bit of a red flag, but I'm okay with it. that they did that. I kind of hope they do a week-by-week thing next year, or next season, I should say, because I think that is a better way to kind of build that rabid fans. You want people talking at the water cooler, all on the same page. Not everybody, when you dump all the episodes at once, everybody's kind of at their own pace and at their own place in the story, and you really want that water cooler talk. I don't know, does anybody have water coolers anymore? I know we do at our work, but we're always like 10 years behind the times at our office. But at any rate, I hope next season that they release this episode week by week. I think it'll be better for the show in the long run if they do it that way. And I'm, like I said, just looking forward to a second season, regardless of how they roll out the episodes. So I want to thank everyone for listening to my thoughts on Fallout. Check it out now on Amazon Prime. You can also check out what's going on with Odds Bodkins Curiosity Shoppe on our Facebook and Instagram pages. We're always posting about horror, fantasy, and science fiction, as well as the latest episodes that we have coming out. Up on Thursday's episode, we're going to be talking about the latest season of American Horror Story Delicate, which dropped its last episode late last week. And while this Fallout series was a gem, Delicate, maybe not so much. We'll talk about that coming up on Thursday's episode. But no matter where you listen to this podcast, like, subscribe, follow it, share it with anyone that you know that loves horror, fantasy, and science fiction. And as well, please leave those reviews. We'd appreciate those. 5 stars would be awesome, but whatever review you leave, we do thank you for taking the time to drop the feedback. And I want to thank you for listening to this episode. And until next time, thank you for visiting Odds Bodkins Curiosity Shoppe. We hope that you found something to your liking and visit the shop again soon. But even though you may come back, you never really get to leave Odds Bodkins Curiosity Shoppe.